Okay, welcome. This is our typical style of question that we might encounter. Now, there are two parts to this question. Our first part is Fred owns a bakery store. He bakes 40 cakes on day 1, 49 on day 2, and 58 on day 3, and so on. Now, which means, of course, that we're going up in 9, so this is quite simply an arithmetic sequence. The second part of the question is that another baker, John, sells 300 cakes on the weekend opening. That's 2 days, so presumably Saturday and Sunday. And subsequently he sells 120 cakes on Monday, and each day after 80% of the previous day's sales. Now, because we've got a percentage in here, that of course means that this is a geometric sequence. So that is A for arithmetic, and that is G for geometric sequence. And what the activity will usually want you to do is to compare the results of both of these. Now, in the first one here, we've got John who's selling, the second one, John's selling 300 cakes, that's a geometric, so we'll deal with that later. We're going to deal with the first one, and we've got 3 things to do. We need to find the total sold by both after 12 days, the amount sold on day 14, and finally, when will they sell 500 cakes each. So if we deal with each of these in turn, number 1, the total sold by both after 12 days. Now that is a straightforward arithmetic sum. It means the total sold is adding day 1, day 2 and day 3. So we've got 40 on the first day, 49, 58, 67 and so on. Now you could conceivably keep adding 9 until you got to the to day 14. So that's day 1, that's day 2, 3, 4, and you keep going until you get to day 14. And then you could add them all together. But a simpler way to do it, of course, is just to do the sum of an arithmetic sequence. Now we want to find the sum of the first 12 in the sequence, which is n divided by 2, 2a plus n minus 1 times d. Now, in this case, the difference is, of course, 9. The first term, a, is 40, and n is 12. So we're just going to substitute those 3 numbers into our formula. And what do we end up with? Well, n is 12. 12 divided by 2, of course, is 6. Is our first one, so 6 goes there. Multiplied, there's a multiply there. 2a is 80 plus n minus 1, or n is 12. 12 minus 1 is 11 times the difference, which is 9. Okay, BIDMAS tells us that we must do this one first. So that is 6 times 80 plus 11 times 9 is 99. So that in brackets. And what we end up, of course, is 579 sold in 12 days. So that is the first part of that. Now, of course, you need to be able to do at least 2 things to be able to get an achieved on this paper. So if we deal with the second part this time, and the second part asked us how many were sold on day 14. So let's just get rid of that. So now we want to find the number sold on day 14. Now that just means day 14 on its own. It doesn't mean the total sold up to day 14. It means on day 14. So if we were to look at our sequence again, we would have 40, 49, 58, 67 and so on. We just want to find the number that is day 14. And again, you could list it out and keep going until you got to day 14. You'd be quite within your rights to do that. But what we want you to do is, of course, to use the formula, which the formula this time is the arithmetic term in a sequence equals a plus n minus 1 times the difference. Okay, this is relatively straightforward. So all we're going to do, the term that we want is 14, so term 14 equals our first term, which is 40, plus n minus 1, well, n is 14 in this case, let's just write that out, n equals 14. Our difference again is 9, and a is 40. So, n is 14, 14 minus 1 is 13, and the difference is 9. And if we do the maths on that, that ends up being 157. So on day 14, he sold 157. Now, the last part. Now, the final part to this first part is a sum. And what we want to know this time is how long will it take to sell 500 cakes? Now, the only formula that can help us here is the sum of an arithmetic sequence. And the one that we know is the sum, or the sum of the number, is n over 2, 2a plus n minus 1d. They all look very similar, don't they? So what we're going to do is we're just going to write out what we know. Now, we know that the difference is 9 each time, and we know that our first term is 40. And we know that the sum is 500. But we do not know n, which is how long it will take. So we're going to substitute in. We know that 500, after a certain number of days, equals n over 2. 2a, of course, again becomes 80 plus n minus 1. Now, we can't put anything for n because we don't know what it is, but we do know that the difference is 9. So, what we're going to do here is we are going to substitute in and get rid of this here. So what we're going to do, we get 500n equals n over 2, 80 plus, now we're going to just multiply out this bracket here to start with. So that becomes 9n minus 9, because 9 times n is 9n, and 9 times 1 is 9. And in this case it's a minus 1, so that must be minus 9. Now, to make things a little bit easier, we're going to also get rid of this here, this annoying 2. Now, to get rid of this, we're just going to multiply both sides by 2. And that has the effect of getting rid of that 2. So 500n becomes 1000n equals, we just get rid of that 2, n 80 plus 9n minus 9. Okay? So what we've got there now is a little simpler to deal with. Now, you can see here we've got an 80 and a minus 9, so that's like a plus 80 and a minus 9. So what we're going to do again is we're just going to take it a little bit further and make that simpler. n 80 minus 9 is 71 plus 9n. So, now that we have got this far, our next step is quite simply to multiply out these two here. Okay, so we get 1000n equals 71n plus 9n squared. Now, we're going to just do a little bit of rearranging because it doesn't matter how these are written. We've got 9n squared plus 71n equals 1000. Okay? Now, well, I've just got rid of the n because it's actually not necessary. We know that the total is 1000, so we know that that is 1000. Now, what you can probably notice here is that we've got almost a quadratic. So to turn that into something which we can use, we're just going to do this. 9n squared plus 71n equal minus 1000 equals 0. Because that plus that equals 1000. So if we take 1000 away from this, we would obviously get 0. Now, we're going to come to use something called solver on your calculators. Okay, so let's just exit that, AC, and go to menu. And you can see you've got this one here, which is number 8. We're going to use the equation. and we're going to press F2 for polynomial. Now, the degree we want to use is 2, and that relates to this. Because we've got a squared number in it, that means we need to use 2 for squared. And all we're going to do is put in the numbers in the order that you see them here. That's these three here. So, what we do is we've got 9n squared, so we're going to put 9, press exec. The next one is 71, oops, exec. And the last number is minus 1000. Now, we put those three numbers in. All we do now is press solve, and we get 7.31. We actually get two numbers. We've got a negative number and a positive. It's a positive one that we're looking for, 7.31. So, 7.31 is the number of days that it takes. And there you've solved it.